You're listening to MSP Waves Radio. I am your host, Agrod, currently Witness 9 on the Steem blockchain. This is the Steem Witness Forum. It is my absolute pleasure to invite some of the top 20 witnesses that are on the Steem blockchain to go give you the best update that I think that you can possibly get on the state of the network, what's going on at Steem at HQ, and just some of the thoughts from the leading witnesses that help build the blockchain, secure the blockchain, and figure out the future direction. So it is my absolute pleasure right now to be able to go bring on Andrarchy. Andrarchy is the director of content for Steemit Inc. If you don't know, there's basically three different Steems that you should be aware of. There is Steem, which is a blockchain. There is Steemit.com, that is a website that is a portal to the Steem blockchain, and then there is Steemit Incorporated, which is a company. It's a blockchain development company, working to make this a better place to build apps, dApps, build awareness around the way that folks can use the blockchain and help increase the stability, help increase the usability, the scalability of the Steem blockchain. So, Andrarchy, this has been a really big week. I just saw the post come out not that long ago. It's got a pretty big update on Steemit blog. It seems like things are pretty productive and moving along. So, thanks for coming on the show. And how are things?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for doing that great summary of who we are and what we do. I think it might have been better than anything we've really put out. But that's exactly right. It probably hasn't been as big a week as it might seem. That was really a summary of a lot of the work that we've been doing up until now, and then highlighting some of the more serious kind of adjustments that we've decided to take after doing that work. So, like, for example, the decision to take Hard Fork 20 off of the back burner and put it back onto the front burner, that's more of a decision. We've been doing a lot of these projects we're doing a little bit of work on here and there, and it's kind of like a dynamic system where things come up, energy gets diverted to a different project, and that project kind of lingers on the back burner. And it's not necessarily like a conscious decision or a business decision, but a lot of the decisions we make are decisions we know we have to make. When we shift to something like a scalability related issue, very often it's like, no, this needs to be done because 10 other things need to be done after that. And if we want to be able to do those things, we got to do this thing. And often the decisions are probably a lot more boring than people think. It's not like, we sit around a round table and go, oh my God, it's the war room, there's a nuke coming at us. It's more of a, very obvious decision based on a very technical issue. But I think, what's more symbolized by that recent update is that we've now gotten, symbolized isn't the right word for that. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold here, so
Maybe demonstrated?
Yeah, hopefully highlighted, speaking of, I'm sorry I shared my mucus with everybody before while I was waiting to go on here. I didn't realize I was not muted, and I am getting over a cold. So if I'm not very clear or whatever, please cut me some slack. I did hook up this Yeti microphone, so hopefully my audio is very clear, but that only made it worse when I decided to clear my nasal passages before coming up. But anyway, yeah, so we now have a very good content apparatus in place, and we now have a very organized engineering department. The organization has grown incredibly and and we've hired several key positions that are now actually overseeing the engineering department. So, like, these are not positions that are managing the engineering department, nor are they engineers themselves. Their explicit function is to help the engineers organize themselves and remain on task and become more predictable. So we have a project management officer who oversees the implementation of agile methodology across departments. And I think we made one or two other similar hires that are either working with him or working below him who are tasked with that. And so what's happening now, what you're seeing with the content that we're putting out now is that we have a content department that's more than just me. I have a lot of assistance from a coworker, username @Plink, who actually did really the lion's share of the work on the post that you're referencing. And he's just doing a great job of understanding all the technical work that's going on. Sorry, there it is. And summarizing it and putting it into posts. And so really what we were doing with that post was trying to catch everybody up on almost everything of importance that we're doing. And now going forward, we're going to leverage that same apparatus to inform you all of more up-to-date updates. So that was everything of maybe the last 4 months, essentially, plus a lot of stuff that we're leaving out. And now it's going to be more regular, like what you're seeing with our dev portal updates, and what you're also going to be seeing that with our applications team updates. And that's essentially it. I believe for now, things are pretty neatly broken up into applications, blockchain, and and dev portal, with SMTs falling under blockchain. And so, yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with that last post. Did that answer the question?
Well, that's helpful. I mean, it was an open-ended question. The what do you think is like the number one word that's getting tossed around at Steam at HQ? Like the first thing I see is scalability, and that seems pretty important to me. But like, what is the what is like the focal point of the mission right now as you're trying to develop this company and this blockchain? Like, what are you guys focused on? No, you're not live. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go for it.
Sorry, I'm trying to spare everybody my mucus in between breaks. The truth is that there is no one word. Everybody is really focused on whatever they're doing. But I do think I have an answer for you. And it's something I was actually thinking about leading up to this podcast, which is that what we're really focused on is probably not what people think, but it's the right thing. And that's becoming a serious, real company. Like a real company, where with departments and with people who have responsibilities and who are going to be accountable for whether they deliver or they don't, and they have expressed deliverables, right? So scalability, I think we feel that we've really laid the foundation for that really well. I think that we're in a really unique space in the sector right now. Blockchain is still extremely young, and that leads to huge amounts of informational asymmetry within the space. And I find it absolutely fascinating. But one of the ways that I think that this manifests is that the narratives are often dominated by organizations that aren't organizations. They're not real companies. They're not people who are actually putting out real products and then iterating it over time, responding to their customers, and building what their customers or what their key demographics want. So like that's developers and entrepreneurs for us, right? So that is what we're doing. And most of that stuff, that's really what motivates us behind the scenes. Is there's all this stuff that's being worked on by other people in the Steem space. That's great. We want as much being done by people outside of Steem as possible. But what does this leave for us? If other people are working on it, we can't really add value there. So we need to work on where we add value. And so where we add value is usually related to updating the blockchain through hard forks and various other projects, and a lot of technical code submissions that are really the real heroes. The engineers who are submitting pull requests every day, whether they're from the community or for us, and those pull requests are getting pushed to production all the time, those guys are actually the heroes. It's not. It's really not. The great projects that we have lined up. If those projects don't line up with like the overall trajectory of what we're working on, they're never going to get executed. So the real point there is, the question was, what's the main thing, and the truth is that most of us are really.
Oh, you cut out again, Andrarchy. The truth is, oh, we're gonna be left forever with that cliffhanger. Andrarchy, are you there? That's just savage. I want to give Andrarchy another minute. He might just be trolling all of us, That's entirely possible. Andrarchy.
If you
Hey, try again, bud. I think you lost some internet. Yeah, he might have dropped or something. That's like the best cliffhanger I could ever ask for. The truth is dead silence. I want to give him like one more minute here. I know that's not the best live radio, but this is a internet forum, live radio people. Andrarchy, are you back? A future thinker wants us to get into a discussion of what is truth. All right. All right. Well, that's it from Steam It. The truth is out there, people. That's what we know. All right. That's hilarious. So let's oh, and
can you hear me now?
oh, now you're back. The truth is,
God, what was before? Okay, can I get more context? I probably went on for a long time after that. What was it?
so
Oh,
the context is something to the extent of Steam It is not the primary focus of Steam It right now is not necessarily on scalability apps. It's actually about trying to grow as a company into an actual organization. And the truth is,
geez. I mean, what I was saying was that I think what I was getting at was that we're in this unique time in this space where communications in the blockchain sector are dominated by projects that are not real companies, that are not really producing products. They are not dealing with quote unquote customers. In this case, it would be developers and entrepreneurs who want to integrate your open source protocol. They are just not real organizations at all. They're basically PR machine, putting out information about claims about the awesome thing they think they're going to build. And let me tell you, it takes a lot more to build anything than the ability to say you're going to build it. And so what we've been spending the last year, arguably since the day Steem launched, is going from being a group of really innovative, really clever, really, counterintuitive thinkers, people who are willing to go against the grain and disregard the conventions of the technology sector entirely, right? This is a very, our team is made up of people who could have gone down the road of Silicon Valley 2 years ago and made the decision to go, no, we're gonna engage in the building of a sector that's totally new. And everybody you're hearing talking about now who's saying they're gonna come in, yeah, Luke Stokes, DACs are the new companies. There you go. That's the truth. And the DAC we're involved in is Steem. Steem It is just a small component of DAC. That's so prescient, Luke. I've actually been working on a post, or thinking about a post that really what Steem enables is it's a really good way of firing up DACs. but that's really off topic, and that's certainly not a company policy. To answer to get back to the root of the question, yes, scalability is an issue. Yes, releasing SMTs is an issue. Releasing communities, accomplishing anything that we say we're going to do is an issue. But the core problem beneath all of those issues is, are you a serious organization that is, they call it an organization for a reason. It's organized. And if it's not organized, it's not an organization. And I honestly think that where we stand out against the competition is that we are a real organization. And here I'm not talking about something necessarily like EOS or a serious competitor like Ethereum, like Ethereum is great, Bitcoin is great, and EOS has a lot of potential. I'm talking about everybody else in the space. I think that there's going to be plenty of room for for the real players and the real organizations. My point is just that the memes out there are dominated by non-organizations, and so really our priority is on becoming an ever-improving organization, and that actually means learning from organizations in the past. Successful DACs, and I'll end on this point because I think it's something people should really mull over. Successful DACs will integrate the lessons learned from massive corporations in the past. Google, Microsoft, they're huge. They have thousands and thousands of people. There are lessons to be learned there. DACs will improve on those. They will enable an order of magnitude increase in efficiency that will enable them to outperform those organizations, or they will die. But I believe that they can, if they integrate the lessons that those organizations have learned. And that's it.
So if I push on you a little bit, I think my concern would be speaking about, I'm trying to channel some of the frustration that I've heard from the community about Steemit over the last little bit, and not trying to be rude because I really support you guys, but I also want to give voice to some of the frustrations. Steemit has existed for 2 years. They have the vast majority of the Steem on the platform, and I think what a lot of folks are going to want to hear is not, hey, we're trying to come into our own as an organization. They want to hear, this is how we are effectively executing on the priorities of the company, or at least the priorities of the blockchain development, being SMTs, being scalability, being communities, being velocity, and the sort of sign-up issue. I think a lot of people, and to a lesser extent now, but I still hear it, sort of like the Steemit itself UI and trying to make that either more user-friendly or prettier, although I'm not, I'm relatively happy, so I'm not totally in that camp, but I do think that there are some concerns around, how do we, the blog updates are great, and they are certainly catching us up to speed. It's not just some of the thought is, we want the coins now. Some of the thought is, there's a real fear around like the 512 gigabyte servers for the RAM that you need to run an RPC node might not be big enough anymore, and that's not like years away. That's a couple weeks away, maybe 1 or 2 months away. And then we start going into terabyte RAM servers for the full RPC nodes. I mean, we have some real scalability issues that have definitive timelines, and I think folks are interested in hearing not just the timelines and not just about like we are forming around the company. I think a lot of folks want to know how we're like executing on this. Did I lose Androrky again?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go for it.
Great. Sorry about that. That was many questions, many of which were on different subjects. With respect to scalability, one of the ways that we've helped address that problem is through our implementation of RocksDB. That's already addressing the RAM issue. um, if people don't realize that the critical, what I was trying to communicate was that the important issue here is us being a serious organization, that because it's organization and internal communication that is actually the solution to all of the problems that you mentioned. The reason I mention it is in the hopes that people listening to this will appreciate that reality. If they can't, that's I don't know what to tell you about that. You know, we listen to the community. We're constantly trying to improve ourselves and improve our communications and put out great code that makes Steem better. But the whole point of Steemit is that we can move fast without asking permission. You know, of course, if we put out stuff that the community doesn't like and the witnesses don't like, they're not going to approve it. So we still have to make sure that it's the stuff that people want. You know, SMTs, everybody wants them, so we're working hard on them. You know, that, you know, as far as, you know, I don't know. Your question was really all over the place. I would, you
Well,
know,
the question to
it would
me
be
sort
really
of,
more helpful if you kind of like we could. I'd be happy to go through each one, but it would be great if you could just kind of like cut them down and ask specific ones, and then I'll answer each one.
well,
I'd be happy to.
I think my focus is trying to get to the frustration that folks want to see things executed on, and that the answer of we're working on the organization itself, it doesn't seem to hit the concern that I hear from the users that are sitting in PalNet all day of like they want to see SMTs come out, they want to see communities come out, they want to see velocity come out, and you know I'm trying to balance. You're saying, look, the core of this is to make sure that as an organization we're functioning so that that can happen. And at the other end, I'm hearing from the users, hey, we want to see these things appear. We want to see the stuff executed on. So I guess some of my question is,
Who has executed more than us? Who in the space has executed more than us? You know, I get, you know, people love our products is actually what that's saying. You know, people are sitting around all day talking about us and talking about what we're doing and talking about our products. I love that. And we love that. And we really appreciate the energy and the passion that people are bringing to our ecosystem, 100%. And those people are important, you know, but let's be very, very clear what we're talking about. You're talking about people who love our products, and those products are the only products in the space. Like, think about that sentence for a second. You know, I was having this conversation with somebody in Slack, right? And I said, you know, Steem is the only blockchain protocol with any real applications. Think about how simple and stupid that sentence is and how easy it should be to disprove. And of course, the person objected, reactively, right? That can't be true. No, really? I mean, okay. Can you direct me to one? Because I'd really love to see who our quote-unquote competition is. Silence, no response ever, right? So I could put that question to you, and again, genuinely would love to hear the answer so that I can go look at what they're doing and see how we can integrate what they're doing to help us be better, which is the great thing about open source code, right? If somebody actually comes out with better code, we can take it and adapt it and include it in our code. So who in the space is more productive than us?
well, I'm not sure I would be. I spend all my time in Steam, so that's not a question I can address. But I would say something like
So you know of
BitShares.
none, is what you're saying.
BitShares has functioning tokens. I can go onto BitShares, create my own token in a matter of seconds and/or minutes. The same with Ethereum. I mean, some of these things, the ability to tokenize the
Join
internet.
their social network.
Say that again?
Where's their social network on a blockchain?
Oh,
Where are
yeah.
there applications that real people use?
No, there's certainly some
So
truth
your
to that.
answer is you don't know of any. That's your answer. I mean, there may be some, but I've yet to find somebody who has an answer to that, because and their answer is usually, well, I'm so involved in the Steam ecosystem, in the Steam apps. I love these apps so much that I don't know anything about what's going on anywhere else. That's because nothing is going on anywhere else. Our products are the best products in the space. Our blockchain is the best blockchain in the space. And we're doing more. We're the most productive team in the space. And if people want to understand how we do that, that's what I'm here. That's what I can communicate to them. But I'm not a developer. I'm not an engineer. I don't design the blockchain. I'm not Vandenberg. I'm not theoretical. I'm not those guys. They're magicians, and I honestly just know at a very high level what they're doing, and I can only speak to the high level of the organization.
I'd like to open it up to some of the other witnesses that are here that are part of this conversation. Maybe we can do another 10 or so minutes with Andrarchy. If some of the other witnesses would like to ask a question to him on this topic on a separate one, but just kind of
Yeah. Also, sorry. I just want to apologize. I hope I didn't come off like an asshole there.
No.
It's a good question. It's a legitimate question, and just sometimes I seem like a dick.
No, the response is good, right? Like, there's a lot of good things that are going on in Steem, and I think hiring positions is healthy. I think getting a organization organized is healthy, so that you can communicate, that you can cooperate, that you're not duplicating efforts. That's awesome.
Exactly.
I think I also want, like you know, having been in higher education publishing, which is really about technology, oddly enough, it's all around like online homework systems and trying to get that done. I've worked with product teams for the last decade, and I recognize that it's a challenge to see improvements. And in a lot of ways, it's like repairing a spaceship as you're flying it. So I believe in that. And then
Spot on. Yeah.
I'm also trying to channel some of the users that are frustrated that want SMTs. There's like the airdrop token, but they're starting on Ethereum before they bring it to here. So folks are, I hear it in chat and I see it on the chain that people want to see these developments go live. And you're right. That is an absolute demand for your product, and that in a lot of ways speaks volume about what you're doing and what you're working on has a lot of utility and is in the right spot. But I just know that folks are also looking to hear, we're super close, this stuff is coming, we're almost there, and less about like, well, we're still trying to build the organization so that it functions the way we want. And it's a challenge because you guys are only 2 years old. It's not like this is a 20-year company and people have been doing this forever. So I'm just trying to I'm trying to acknowledge that there are pretty wonderful things that are happening at Steem. I'm trying to acknowledge that there are frustrations from the user base that are looking for code implementations to go live, and balancing that with the current state of, hey, we're trying to organize this so we can hit those goals. Whereas I think the disconnect is between we are trying to organize to hit those goals and the community saying, we wanted them yesterday.
Yeah, that's totally fair, and I'll just add one more point on that, and then let's take the conversation, bring other people into the conversation. We are, like I said, that organizational stuff. It's all about delivering SMTs and communities. Oh my God, my mucus is getting out of control. As fast as we can. We know people want these ASAP. It's also the case that, like you said, we're a young organization, and I think people are settling on the rule of thumb, that, if it usually takes two times longer to ship a product than you think, then in blockchain it takes two times. And we're with respect to communities and SMTs, a lot of the work we're doing on this organizational stuff is to be able to tell you all exactly when they're going to launch and be truthful about it. Because it's actually, one project is building this stuff. It's a whole other project to forecast when that project will be done, and that's just a fact of organizations, you know. So what we don't, where we have faltered in the past was making projections about when our products will launch and being wrong. And I'm happy to admit that. Well, I'm not happy to. I'd much rather not. But it is a fact, and we don't want to replicate that mistake. And so what I could say is that that in the very near future, we will be able to give you a highly accurate forecast of when those will ship. But until we can do that, like if you're familiar with like statistics and probabilities, it's like if you can't accurately forecast, you can't forecast at all. There's no window. And it's a remarkably interesting thing to gain direct insight into how that works. But, you know, I promise we're doing a lot of work on trying to be able to tell you guys exactly when this stuff will be ready. But on blockchain, right, everything really has to be bulletproof. That's part of the problem with blockchain projects, is that you can't move fast and break things in certain contexts, and that's a lot of what we're doing with respect to like Juicy and Hivemind and you know, the RocksDB implementation. I think actually that might be a little off base, but the idea is to build additional layers where you can move fast and break things without, because you're not on the blockchain. But when stuff is being, you know, added to the blockchain, you can't move fast and break things. So we'll ship it once it's ready, and we're working as fast as we can to get it ready as soon as we can. And in the very near future, we should be able to update you on when exactly that will be. But we will not ship them until they're ready. That's one promise I can make. And now I think it would be a good time to open it up and bring other people into the conversation.
Absolutely. Other of the top witnesses, anybody have a question for Androrky?
I'd like to throw in a little defense. A lot of people are talking about how they want more communications from Steem Inc. And the Androrky is here telling you that they're starting more organization and, you know, building departments, such as a PR and department, and that's going to be exactly what you want. So I think they're doing what everyone wants.
Yeah, this is Luke Stokes jumping in. I was going to say a similar thing in terms of the people who are complaining often have never run a business. And I bootstrapped a business for 10 years. And I understand this is very difficult stuff to move quickly without structure and organization. And so when people are like, but I just want my thing, it just kind of sounds like a child who's kind of throwing a tantrum. It's like, okay, great, but we're adults here building a real thing. And it's very, very complicated. And it's by far the best one on the planet at the moment, as far as actual real people that use it. So, you know, yeah, hold Steem Inc. to the fire, ask Androrky the hard questions, but at the same time, let's be adults about it. Like, if somebody says, what about this, what about that, I think his response is a good one. It's like, show me something that's better, and we will improve by whatever they're doing. But if you can't, like, then work with us for what we are doing and help us where we are at. And I'm cool with that. And again, I just want to tell you, Andrew, thank you for coming to this forum, and also for the increased communication. You guys have been consistently posting about every week, and I love it, and it's fantastic. It's what we've been asking for, and you're delivering on that. So I at least want to say, hey, when we're asking for something, let's actually like acknowledge that we got it and be happy about that. And at the same time, if people think things aren't happening, go look at the GitHub. You can either say they're not happening, or you can look at the GitHub, and that's where it's happening.
Yeah, thanks for that input, guys. And I just want to, you know, make it clear that the reason I'm here is because I want to engage with everyone who respectfully and considerately, wants to engage with us and wants to hold us to the fire. You know, Annex, Luke Stokes, you know, these guys are really smart, and they don't, believe it or not, always agree with us and support us. In fact, they're very often talking about the problems that are in the space, and that's great. And we love reading what they have to write. Annex wrote a great post recently about a potential a theoretical attack vector on DPoS that I highly recommend. Like, that's great. We're here to engage with those people, you know. But we, you know, but if it's not constructive, and so like I think one of the things we can get out of how to communicate with one another, and you know, a point that Luke made that I actually have written on my whiteboard right in front of me is that I think one of the things we might, and I'd be curious to get people's feedback on this is like, maybe what we need to offer, in addition to all of what we're doing now, because the beauty of being able to having the system in place where we output technical updates is that now we can start getting more creative with it. And one of the things I'm thinking is about offering some entrepreneurial leadership in the space, because we believe that Steem is the blockchain of opportunity. We think that it turns everybody, like the moment you register, you're an entrepreneur. You upvote something, you're a curatorial entrepreneur. You post something, you're a content entrepreneur. And one of many of the lessons that we've had to learn over the last 2 years is how to be a real entrepreneur and how to turn from being an entrepreneur into a real organization. And I think, a lot of people in the space, like, they're new to this, right? And they don't know how to communicate, and they don't know how to create a serious organization or a serious business. Like Luke said, a lot of the people who are criticizing have never run a business, and maybe that's something we need to help them with, and help educating people on how to be a real entrepreneur and how to build a business plan and how to integrate Steem into that business plan. What do you guys think about that?
That sounds like something that could fall under the mission of the Minnow Support Project of trying to get what amounts to something like blockchain business development as sort of a wing of this thing to try to get entrepreneurs here and try to connect them with devs. I mean, I still think finding devs is one of the hardest things that's on the platform, because they end up coming here and then they build their own things, and so they don't always have time to work on other projects. So finding, but I do think that there's a marriage there where you can get the business folks to meet up with the programmers and the coders, and I think that there's a lot of development that can happen with that. I believe in that, and I don't know, I could talk to you offline about how we could structure that into the Minnow Support Project and try to help folks get launched that way.
Well, if nobody has any comment on that, somebody in the Slack said, they disagreed with Steem being the best blockchain, and I have a response for that, because I think that that's a trap that a lot of people get sucked into, this idea of best, which is a purely subjective thing. And so the way I'm thinking about responding to this common, sinkhole of attention is, okay, maybe Steem isn't the best. It's just the only one. It's the only blockchain that you can use to power your application now. So as long as it's the only one, maybe let's abandon the discussion of best. Best is always going to be subjective, and it's always going to be dependent on what use case you're looking for. And our goal is definitely 100% not to create the best blockchain. That's what everybody else in the space who isn't actually producing anything, that's what they're going after. We're going for the one you can actually use to power your real application with real users and a real value proposition. That's what we do.
I want to open it up particularly to Crimson Clad, who is half of the witness for Follow BTC News, or Tim Cliff. Do either of you have a question you'd like to share with Andrarchy, or Onyx, or Luke? Do you have something that you'd like to ask that wasn't, supporting the current iteration or the current approach of Steemit?
I'll jump in and just touch on one of the things that was said, which was there was a comparison made between launching an SMT and launching a BitShares token or an Ethereum E20. And I just want to kind of highlight the fact that there's some pretty major differences between launching tokens under those protocols. And if you've read the white paper for SMTs or looked into a lot of the activity that's going on in GitHub, SMTs are doing a lot more than just launching a token. They have some pretty complex behavior that needs to be coded. That includes like automatic market makers, just the idea of being able to vest and vote on content with SMTs. So there's a lot of functionality being programmed there more than just launching a token, which I think is part of the reason why it's a lot larger project than just launching a new token on BitShares or Ethereum.
Well said.
Any more questions for Andrarchy?
I had a kind of a clarifying question. What would you say is the #1 product for Steem Incorporated. You guys are saying that you're working on the product, but I think it can be a little confusing because you have a team that's working on Steemit.com, but then I would argue, and I have been arguing, that the product is the Steem blockchain itself. That's what you guys are doing that no one else can do. Other people can build front ends for the Steem blockchain, but the Steem blockchain itself, currently with app base and all the complexities, it's your tight team that's working on that. And I was wondering, like, could you clarify for people what is the product from Steem Incorporated's perspective that they are focused on?
That's a great question and the right answer. The right answer is the place where we can add the most value right now is by improving the capabilities of the Steem blockchain by submitting code to the GitHub that gets approved by the witnesses, and also non-consensus code. So things like Hivebind, like Juicy, these things, they improve the functionality of the Steem blockchain, even if they're non-consensus. So that is right. Steemit.com. I think a lot of people tend to go, oh, but that means you don't care about Steemit.com, and that's far from right. What Steemit.com is invaluable to us for several key reasons. The first one is that it gives us the best insight into what developers are going to need from the Steem blockchain. I thought Ned made the, in his recent GoPax presentation, he made this great point that I was like shocked we've never articulated before, but Steem is basically a content management system on a blockchain, and it's quite simple. It contains the key primitives for a powerful content management system on a blockchain. And those primitives should only be the primitives that you want on a blockchain. And they should be the primitives that are most flexible for developers who are looking to leverage a blockchain to store those content and to power an application. And so we focus on it's actually the simplest things. That means that they take the least time to code, but that have the most powerful functionalities. Like SMTs, one of the common mistakes I see is, when people compare EOS to smart media tokens. SMTs are a sub-protocol of the Steem blockchain, and they're actually a minor functionality on top of the Steem blockchain. Launch your own version of Steem with customizable parameters. That's a whole different thing than launching a blockchain protocol and then all of the ecosystem elements that have to come after that. Steem is a mature ecosystem that is much, much, much more than the blockchain itself. And SMT, and when we look at the ecosystem and what that ecosystem needs, we see stuff like SMTs. We deal with developers. We know what they want. We tell them, why aren't you using Steem? Why don't you use the Steem token? It's an amazing token. I argue often that it's the best token. And the reasons were, well, we want to give ourselves tokens. We want to ICO. We want to customize the token inflation rate. And so that's why we did SMTs. And even simple implementations or simple features on a blockchain are actually really complicated and take a decent amount of time. And so that's why we take the approach that we do. And that's where Steemit.com comes in, is that also we go, okay, you want that. We have all of this expertise in actual application development, so we gain the insights there, and now we can go to the blockchain team and say, this is what we've learned, not just from developers, but from our own development team. And then the other thing that Steemit.com does is, is that it aggregates users. It's a vacuum for users that helps build the Steem user base. And one of the things I think we've discussed before is, if you look at applications like DTube and DLive and Utopian, these are applications that are growing exponentially. And that's because they're tapping into the pre-existing Steem user base. And this is one of the hardest, this is actually arguably the hardest task for the entrepreneur, is not building the application, but reaching the inflection point of users where you can get a sustainable application. And so Steem, it serves this critical function, both from an information perspective, the information we glean from being active developers in the space, and then second, building this exponentially growing user base that every developer in the space who comes in can tap into, and that is an integral component of a positive feedback loop that almost guarantees exponential growth in a world without significant competitors.
Yeah,
Key caveat.
I've said that this whole thing is like a giant marketplace in the sense that like eBay is a marketplace, Amazon is a marketplace, Steam itself is a marketplace, and having tried to start one and having failed at starting one, I totally agree with you that the challenge isn't necessarily the technological one where you like build the marketplace. The main objective is to populate that, and here we have 60,000 active accounts. That's pretty good on a daily basis. There's something like 300 or 400,000 active accounts on a weekly basis. That's a lot of people that are coming here. We see, the website is in the top 1,500, top 1,000 in the world. So I would echo that as a great insight in terms of figuring out, you know, people will say, I hear it in chat at times, EOS is going to take over for Steem. And I'm like, where are they going to get 1 million users? Like, where are you going to get, like it took me 2 years to build up a 20,000 follower account. Like, the people that are here, are they going to give up what they've created here to suddenly shift? Like, how do you get that marketplace populated? So,
yeah, and we're focused. I think it would be a really bad idea for EOS, and that's why I don't think it's going to happen. It would be a really bad idea to be, what we're going to compete on? Social media and intelligent tokens. Well, then why are you better than Steem? Because that's what they do. What EOS is going to do is build a platform on top of which you can build platforms. That's what they're looking to do, and that's what I think they have the potential to be incredibly disruptive on. It is building an incredibly flexible, smart contract platform that leverages delegated proof of stake to offer a freemium model. That's it. That's the thing. That's their value proposition. And if they want to go down the route, and I just hate getting into the conversation of EOS because I know so many people are involved in the project, and I wish them all the luck. It's just like different things, man. And we're really specific. Actually, arguably, the most important takeaway with respect to addressing the scalability issue is our application-specific nature. We are trying to build a blockchain that stores content really well, and that stores smart media tokens really well. And that's it. And that's all we have to do. And that makes scaling it much easier. And if you talk to people like Vandenberg, they will tell you the exact same thing. Yes, AppBase is the technical solution, but on a higher level, the real solution is the dedication to simple but powerful tools. Another thing we could talk about is, we don't have to talk about Steemit. We can talk about other areas in the space. If anybody has, I'm happy to see that everybody kind of likes the direction that we're going. So, we could talk about other things in the space, or I can just shut up and leave. I'll listen. I got nothing going on today, so I plan on hanging out.
well, yeah, I think so. We're an hour deep. This is a little bit longer than I intended. I want to make sure that all the top witnesses get a chance to sort of share what they're working on, whether it's perspectives on Steem, whether we move away from Steem. I'm a top 20 witness. I'm not number one. I fully recognize that. Even if I was, I don't think that the witnesses get to sort of like dictate to others what they do or what they talk about. I try to provide some prompts. The other witnesses are certainly welcome to just completely ignore my prompt and answer whatever question or whatever they want to talk about. It's a libertarian commune. Do as you will. I'm just here to provide some guidance, and you can take it or not. I guess what I'd like to start by doing is just letting the some of the folks have spoken already, and a fair number of the people in the audience should know who these folks are. But can everybody just sort of introduce themselves? Let's go alphabetically down the list, and people can just sort of share who they are, some of what they're working on, and maybe why people would know them, something like that. You want to start, Onyx? Onyx?
Sure. And it is NEX. I have to formalize that because there's
NEX.
something down the pipeline. Anyways, you know me probably not by this name, but by Cheetah or Steam Cleaners, because those are the projects that I created and manage. And I've also recently built things like Guard and done the back end for things like MacBot and Spaminator. And I've been working on this a lot recently. I posted a witness update a few days ago, and if you haven't read that, I encourage you to go read it. A lot of stuff basically for app-based. I've been testing out the new changes, trying to integrate that with my code because I have a lot of code on this platform. And yeah, lots of real life stuff going on. And I also made a post Andrarchy alluded to earlier. I did some analysis of basically delegated proof of stake and what happens when you maximize for greed in a way, and how that could kind of destroy the platform if you let it go that way. So I think that's an interesting read if you have the time for that as well. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Crimson Clad?
Hi, I'm Crimson Clad. I am one half of the Follow BTC News Witness, and so a lot of you guys maybe know me from here or around Discord. I do a lot of behind-the-scenes work, so when you go out on the platform and you look at my profile, you don't notice right away that I might even be a witness. I started out working in PalNet and some of the other community discords. I work directly with a lot of people, and that's grown into building tools for the community that have come out of community wants and desires, and watching how big groups of active people interact with each other and how to foster growth in Steem and on Steemit with that. So you'll find our witness team took over Steem.chat. We run and develop that now. We've worked on quite a few pull requests. We hire devs out of the community. We just launched Steem Tipper that we're really proud of, and that I'm working on quite a bit in the background. We're using that to help you tip Steem on social media platforms. So right now it's out there on Twitter, but we're going to be bringing it to dozens of other social media platforms with new integrations there. We're currently working on a script to help MSP here, but also to share with the wider community to help kind of share some blacklisting and spam and other kind of concerns that communities have with voting or with stake or with rewards. We're building a script that we're going to use in here, test it in here, and then release to the wider world as well. So lots of stuff going on. You may not necessarily see me posting, but I'm always available to talk to, and you'll always find me in Discord or Steem.chat lurking around and helping out.
Luke?
I guess I'll go next. My name is Luke Stokes, and I've been a top 20 witness for about 6 months now. I've been a witness for about a year. And my deal is essentially trying to explain complicated programming things in simple terms. You know, I try to, as a programmer for multiple decades and an entrepreneur, you know, I try to dive into what these things actually are and then explain them in language people can actually understand. I run a weekly exchange transfer report, so we can kind of keep an eye on the actual money flow in the system. Most people don't realize that about 3 to 1 the number of people that are withdrawing money to the number of people depositing money. Those are important metrics for the economics of the system. Also run a monthly witness engagement report to kind of let people know how engaged people are in voting for witnesses, because witnesses secure delegated proof of stake blockchain that we all love and enjoy. So it's important that we vote for witnesses that we know will do that well and understand code and also are active. I think a lot of witnesses are amazing with the code side, and that's great, but sometimes they're not as active publishing on the blockchain. So I try to bring a balance of the both. I want people to be understanding the social applications that they are supporting as a witness by being engaged in them. And then also I would hope that they are technical as well, or if not, they should be hiring people that are, so they could do code reviews and things like that, because that is a really important job of a witness when new changes are pushed out. So yeah, that's my deal, is just trying to help people understand things. I do another thing called understandingblockchainfreedom.com. It's just some videos I put together to help explain cryptocurrency. So I think that's a big part of this whole platform. So I'm really passionate about that. Been involved in crypto for more than 5 years. So I want more and more people to be excited about that too. I think it's going to increase human well-being across the planet, and I want more people to know about it.
Tim?
Hey everyone, my name is Tim Cliff. I'm another one of the top witnesses, and I guess my activities are kind of all over the place. I try to figure out what the thing that is going to add the most value is and work on that. So the projects that I've worked on during my time have kind of been all over the place. A few of the things that I'm more well known for is me and P-Funk were the people who basically got the majority of the content for the Steemit.com FAQ up on the website. Me and another witness also worked on the welcome page that a lot of Steemians see when they first sign up for their Steemit account. That's like the first landing page that they reach, which has a lot of helpful information. I also spend a lot of time in the help channel of Steem.chat as the primary moderator there, basically making sure that users who are having various issues with the platform get those resolved as best possible. And then I also spend a lot of time just kind of listening to the community and gathering feedback on what a lot of the pain points are, what things people want done with the platform, and trying to advocate for the changes that I feel are going to make the platform better than it is today.
I'll chime in here too, because not only am I the host, but I am a top 20 witness. I'm Agrod, currently witness 9 on the Steem blockchain. I was the founder of the Minnow Support Project. And actually, Fierstekin is in the audience. What ended up happening is that I wasn't getting very far, and then I wanted to get better. I read a post by Kaylin Art and figured out how to write a little better as an author. And she was kind enough to re-Steem that, and Fierstekin was kind enough to re-Steem that. And then suddenly my account took off, and then I realized just how powerful the Steem community can be in terms of, they worked hard for months and months, but at the time that they supported me with a couple of re-Steems, it literally cost them nothing. And yet it was able to completely transform my life. And I said, okay, this Steem ecosystem is quite amazing. And in terms of this idea of abundance that I'd like to bring into the world, I had never seen anything like it. And so I devoted a lot of time to building the Minnow Support community, helping to go lead this community. We're actually just about at 1 year old. It's kind of hard to imagine that it has both been that long and it has only been that long simultaneously. But we're about at the 1 year anniversary of the Minnow Support project here. We have the account at Minnow Support. It has about 120,000 Steem power on it that we use to upvote people all over this block. We give about 1,500 votes a day. It's been maybe 7,000 users over the past month or so. Maybe it's 2 weeks or a month that we've given those votes out to. We currently have about 20,000 people in the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty network, although we're likely to go prune that down and try to get rid of, we're always trying to get rid of multi-accounts, but all of the moderators and many of the witnesses that are in here are actively trying to narrow this down only to active people that are still sort of in this community within the last month, and trying to get this to be just the active folks that are here. I guess the other thing that I'm working on is I've been putting together this thing called Steem Monsters. As I've watched the activity on the platform go down somewhat because the price of, or I guess post rewards have gone down some as the price of Bitcoin has gone down. So I've seen less activity. And I keep thinking that I want to get things out there that are going to bring people here. Yabamat and I got together to go put together a game called Steem Monsters. I put it into the post or the bottom of this post. I'll put more details out there sometime today. But we're now at the alpha stage where we can launch a brand new game onto the platform, heavily inspired by CryptoKitties, and rather than breed them, we're going to be fighting monsters. Should be fun. So that's how folks should know us. I guess, I ask this question every week. I'm just curious what people think are what's the most important thing to you right now on the blockchain. What's driving your decisions? What do you think is the highest priority? What do either the witnesses or Steam itself needs to focus on? What's the most important thing on the block to you guys?
If we're going in alphabetical order, I guess I'll go again first.
Go for it.
I would modify the question a bit because I don't think that any one thing has to be the top priority because we can chew gum and walk at the same time, so to speak. And I think my highest priority is still focusing on fraud on the platform. And I think we're trying to do as best of the job as we can with Steam cleaners, and sometimes it's not good enough, sometimes it is. I would appreciate more support whenever you guys have it, and have people pay more attention to it. Because I think if we all kind of ignore it and go off into our own little corners and just kind of like play with our own little toys and our own little friend group, we kind of ignore the forest fire that builds up, and it's a dangerous thing. And I encourage people to look at it every now and then and just say, okay, how can I help out in this domain?
What got you started on that? So what made you say I'm going to sit down and write CheetahBot? Like why is that as important to you as you think it is?
Well, actually, you would probably understand this a little bit better than most people, Agro, because you have been in the research space. I'm an academic. I'm a PhD candidate, and that was so when I look at written documents, I always kind of think about it from an academic perspective. And one of the big no-nos in academia is any kind of or form of plagiarism. And when you see someone else that has taken someone else's idea without properly citing it, properly saying, okay, this is someone else's idea and I'm building upon it, that's kind of like, that's how you need to do it in the academic world. So when I first came on this platform, it was absolutely atrocious. There was so much plagiarism. Fristrick just said in the chat, he joined Steam because of plagiarism. And that's true. Someone stole his content and put it on this blockchain. That's how bad it was. And so I just kind of I really believed in the future of Steam, but only if we could actually get a curb on fraud and actually make sure that we could have things work that way. And so because it was such a passion to me to have, and that was my world, the world of properly cited things, I just went down that route, and people knew me from that. That's how I became a witness, and that's kind of where I stayed.
Rock on. Crimson Clad?
Well, I'm kind of the mind that there is no one important thing as NEX. That's mind-blowing. I've always called you Annex in my head. Just said. But truthfully, I kind of am in two camps, and I know Jeff, my witness partner, is the same sort of thing. We look at it from a healthy, flourishing, well-supported technological background. So all of the stuff that we do to bolster the blockchain. So I mean, like for me, the RPC scalability has always been a big thing. So I was so excited to see the RocksDB announcement. So excited. I would like to see, every top 20 running a full public RPC. And this is going to be something that's going to change that game. But the other half of it is, through my work in here and through my work in these huge communities, I'm starting to see the currents and the eddies and the way that people interact and the truly social side of Steemit that's not necessarily even out on Steemit, because the communities are really important. People practice in here what they take to the chain. And so a lot of it for me is being really aware of what's happening in all these communities, because what's happening here is what essentially is going to get out and get locked into our chain. These are the people who are posting, who are creating, who are developing, who are putting all the information into the chain. So I always want to make sure that the tools that Jeff and I focus on, or the services that we give here in the communities, helps drive people towards better interaction, better behavior. And that doesn't mean that we are the police, but what it means is that we can at least help and encourage people to contribute. And that's one of those things that grows everyone. I know it's so cliche, but the reality is if it starts off as simple as somebody takes their Steem out to Twitter, finds a friend, sends them some Steem over Twitter and says, hey, go check your Steem Tibber wallet. It might be a content creator. It might be a new developer. It might be somebody that's going to bring something and bolster the chain. So I mean, we look at it kind of in a two-pronged attack. We want to see people adding to the chain technologically, making this more rock solid, making everybody feel more comfortable about where we're going in the next couple years technologically, but also everything is driven by people right now too. So making sure that the people that we have don't leave, that the people that we want come, and that this proof of brain is a proof of all of the best brains. So I guess it is a little bit of everything, if that can be said.
Luke?
Yeah, that's a perfect lead-in, Crimson, to what I was going to talk about as well. I agree there's no one thing, but the one thing that I'm personally passionate about right now is the idea of helping humanity like progress forward. And I feel like Steem and Steemit is like a microcosm what's going on for humanity. I did a post a while back about long-term rational self-interest as opposed to short-term irrational value extraction. And I've been thinking a lot about the psychological change that we're going through as a species, really, like moving towards a collaborative commons, moving towards an area where if I really want to better myself, the way to do that in the most rational and effective way is to actually better everyone around me in the process. And so what that practically means for me, I see all the time, daily. I get people that message me for upvotes, people that message me to vote for their witness, people that want to extract some form of value from me personally because they feel I have something to offer them. And it always surprises me because I try to remind them, you look to me as a success on various levels, but you're not doing what I did to get here. And that's the thing I want to continually remind people. The way to gain as an individual, from my perspective, especially on the Steem blockchain, which is like a collaborative commons through the rewards pool, is to provide value to as many people as possible. And that doesn't mean trying to extract value. It just means providing so much value that eventually people are like, man, can you just keep doing that? And we're going to find ways to reward you because we don't want you to stop. Because what you're doing is so beneficial to all of us. That mindset is the mindset that I would really hope more and more people can get their thinking around. Because if we're all adding value, if we're all focused on what can I do today to provide value to the Steem blockchain, to the projects going on, to Steemit Incorporated, to my community, what can I do to add value? That's how you're going to be rewarded as an individual. And if you have to go out there and convince someone that you're adding value, and you have to go out there and convince them to give you an upvote or vote for your witness, then you might have to, second guess whether or not you're really adding the value you think you're adding. And like I said, I've been a witness for a year now, and I've basically never really asked for votes. I just put it in my footer and I say, hey, I'm a witness. If I'm adding value and I educated you on something that is meaningful to you and provides value for your life as an individual, then awesome. And I say often, I want to help create the world that we all want to live in. I'm not this isn't altruism here. It's because it's the world I want to live in too, when other people prosper, because that helps me prosper, and so that thinking, I hope we can start moving towards. It's not about how can I extract as much value as possible from the people around me, but how can I add as much value as possible? And by doing that, I think we'll start to see as a community who's an extractor, who's not really adding value. And then hopefully we can start being more comfortable with things like downvotes, as an example, to prevent that from ruining our collaborative commons. We should protect what we value. So for me, it's just a shift in consciousness. It's a shift in thinking towards how we can add value instead of extracting it.
Tim?
So before I go into my stuff, I just kind of wanted to bring up an interesting point that I was thinking about as everyone's talking here, is that one of the cool things about having a decentralized organization like Steem is that a lot of different people have their own most important thing. And I find it fun how everyone's kind of got their project that they're working on, which is the thing that they think is adding the most value to the community. And when you put the collective together of all these different projects that we're working on, there's really a lot of cool stuff going on. As far as me personally, where I'm spending the most amount of time right now is one of the things that I've heard from a lot of people in the community is how they want a lot of changes made to the Steem blockchain. I could go on a really long list of various requests that people have had, and there's a bottleneck right now in that Steemit Incorporated is really the main and only entity that's able to develop hard forks. And so I'm blessed to have a technical background, and so what I'm currently trying to do is teach myself how to properly code hard forks. so that I could possibly be a person who's able to develop some of the changes that people are looking for. And I'd like to also be able to take the experience that I get through that process and share it in such a way that other developers who have similar skills as myself would be able to build on that and possibly be able to start developing changes as well. I think once we have a larger amount of developers in the space, in addition to Steem Incorporated, who are able to work on Steem blockchain code, that we can start to see a lot of innovation there and a lot of new features that people have been asking for.
You know, a couple months back, Justin put out a one post that said, "This is how easy it is to go build I think it was a desktop portal to be able to post on Steem." And I was like, that thing is really cool. And he showed stepwise how he was able to go author that. It didn't take, days and days of code. He did it maybe in 50 lines of code or less, and showed how he was doing that. I thought that instructionals like that would be highly successful here. There's at least one example of that. Lots of people post some tutorials, but getting radio shows, getting that content, yeah, I mean, I think that fits in with that mission of the middle support and trying to get people to learn how this place operates. From my standpoint, I guess when I think of what's the most important, I maybe to a fault I can be financially driven, and so I keep thinking. It was actually Ned that shared a post or a comment or something to that extent that went to the Mayor Multiple, and he basically has this thing that these kinds of social media technologies will follow Moore's law, and that basically if you can double the number of users, you can quadruple the price. And I think in terms of we have this ability to go serve these communities of very impoverished areas that if they have access to our blockchain and we could match either employees with employers and have this be sort of, that sort of DAC mentality where it can be an international DAC and people can work together. That I think has amazing possibilities, and I think in order for us to go raise the value here, the best thing we can do is bring in more humans, and so that's one of the reasons why I sort of moved into the Steem Monsters approach and try to build a game. After seeing that CryptoKitties is basically the highest active thing on the Ethereum network, I was thinking, all right, we can go do this for Steem. And if we do it for Steem and it's successful, we're going to be able to bring a lot of people here who want to play that and get rewards, but they're going to use Steem and use SBD. And by doing that, I think that we really have a good shot of growing the number of folks that are active users on a daily basis, which is why we're building in things like daily quests. That I'm trying to match some of the things that I do while running the Minnow Support Project with also trying to build some of these other projects so that we get folks here. So that's what I got for that one. Okay, so I guess my next question would be something like, I want to focus a bit on communication. Like, how are we doing enough to communicate what we're doing? Are there other ways that we should be doing this? Are there is there enough communication between the witnesses, the projects? I don't know. Communication is just something that's been on my mind recently. How are we doing?
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah,
This
please
is
do.
Luke talking. So it was mentioned in the chat, and there's people that talk about the quote unquote super secret Slack, and there is a communication channel between witnesses and Steem Incorporated that is not as public as some like myself would prefer. And yet there's also a very important need for responsible disclosure and private communication between the top witnesses when there's a security vulnerability. Those things have to be patched as quickly as possible, and they have to be done in a secure way prior to everyone knowing about the vulnerability. And this happens from time to time, and it's really important. And anybody who's been doing software for security, knows all about this. But I think there's a ton of value that also gets communicated and a lot of incredible contribution that happens that most people don't know about. And that's what concerns me, is I think that if people understood the caliber of intelligence and knowledge that goes on in these communications, they would probably be a little more impressed with the witnesses we have today and the value of the Steem blockchain and the people involved in the project. So one of the things I've been thinking about recently is what if we had a read-only situation where you could take maybe the top 100 witnesses, maybe you could take the top 50 real investors, people that put a lot of money in Steem, the people that have the most to lose, and then of course Steem Incorporated as well. Take about 150 people or so, Dunbar's number, wherever that lands, and put them on a chat so that all of that value, all those incredible conversations could be had in a way people could see, and then they could go and post about it and talk about it, give their opinions on it. The reason I would argue for a read-only is that you get a lot of trolls, you get a lot of people that are just not at that same level of thinking who might distract from the conversation. So that's an idea I have to improve communication, to let everybody see the value that is being created. And I know there's some people, I know Tim, you mentioned as well, there's some people that disagree and say, no, we can't do that because we need a somewhat selective conversation space so that we can be free with our thoughts, we can spitball, we can just kind of throw ideas out there without worrying about the negative consequences of just a random idea if you're just kind of throwing ideas out there. And I get that too, and that's important, but I also think this is one of the important things that leaders do. Leaders cast a vision, they're willing to take risks, they're willing to go out there and say, hey, I have an idea, it may be a bad idea, but let's talk about it anyway. That kind of stuff I'd love to see happening more publicly, because I think people would be more understanding of the value that some of the great thinkers we have in this space are contributing, even though they don't see the conversation going on. So there might be hours and sometimes days and days and days of discussions about the Steem blockchain dollar peg or any other improvements that we're talking about, and I'd love to see that value visible so other people could recognize, oh, that person contributed a lot of value to that conversation. I definitely want to give that person my vote because I want them to be incentivized to continue doing that. So I'd love to see just other mechanisms that are more public as far as how we communicate as an ecosystem.
Where do you think that should live? Is that a blockchain thing, a Discord thing, a Slack thing, Telegram? Where do you think that should live?
I've heard multiple options. I think it could be done in Discord. You can have channels that are, permissions based, so certain people can speak and other people can't. I personally like Discord. I think it works well, but frankly, I don't care. Wherever, Steam chat is nice, but it's frustrating a little bit because of the interface. It's like not very responsive, but I know it could be done on Steam chat also. Like wherever it's going to be done, I would be okay with it. The important thing obviously is always the buy-in. Are you going to get Steem Incorporated to buy in? Are you going to get the we call them whales, but you're going to get the major investors to buy in? And are you going to get all the witnesses to buy in? And are we going to have useful conversation? And part of that too is you're eventually going to need some kind of constitution. So even if someone is a top 100 witness, if they're just abusive to people and they're distracting from the value of the conversation, we would have to have a way, some kind of consensus mechanism to say, you get a timeout. You can't contribute to this conversation because you're not adding value. So it's complicated. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's something that might be worth focusing on.
Is that something that we should ask Anjarki to address? I mean, to some extent, it comes down to we either get consensus amongst the top 20 witnesses and do this in sort of a decentralized group think, or we get some top down from Steemit and they say, this is where we think it ought to exist, and then we follow their lead. Do you have thoughts on that, Luke?
Andrew and I have had a number of conversations about this, and that part of it is potentially a difference of perspective with kind of, Ned's perspective on how healthy conversations should go and whether they should be private or public and all that. Part of it is just we do whatever we want to do, and whoever gets on board gets on board. I mean, this right now, what we're doing is an example of a decentralized approach to increased communication. We're all sitting here talking. So I don't know that it is something that could be fully, one person says, here's what we're going to do, and everyone has to agree. I just want to start the conversation because I do think that there's a lot of value that can be created by, everything, all the value we are creating. Let's make it visible, and then people can see it and go, oh, wow, that was a really important conversation. Maybe I disagreed before, but now I see the 4 days of conversation that went on. And if I really want to disagree, then I have to actually go in and read what was said so I can be informed about it.
Anjarki, in general, we're talking about, there's a private Slack that has been mentioned, and we need a way to have a private line of communication so that, especially for security concerns for the network, we can handle that internally and safely. But people also want some of the thought leadership that is otherwise happening in there to be more public. So one of the questions would be, Where should we put that, and how should we organize around it? Is that something that you, as director of content for Steam Incorporated, would want to take the lead on, and then witnesses should follow that lead, or is that something you think that the witnesses should sort of come to consensus on and figure out what we want to do, and then Steam would follow our lead? Do you have an input into how witnesses should be organizing themselves to communicate non-essential security threats to one another and have that be more public?
So it's a good question. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep, coming in clear.
Okay, great. I was tempted to start with a joke by saying something like, I know of no such Slack. But it is a good question, and it's a tough one. I think the way that I look at that Slack, like, look, this isn't one of our projects. You know, one of the things we've been focusing on with our efforts is focusing on what's important, and making sure that we're committing as much of our energy to that as possible. So when I look at this Slack that we're referring to, the way I've always looked at it is that this is a place for vital members of the community to come together and communicate about important issues. And as people have said, you know, this is a vital thing. I think that it's funny how words impact things, and so some people refer to it as a secret Slack. I think there's a tendency with respect to blockchains due to the anonymity component. And it's just funny to think back now, and I feel like this is a conversation we've been having for 2 years. You know, when everything is kind of anonymous and in text and on Steema.com, you know, or now whatever, you know, interface, you know, there's a lot of black holes where your imagination can run. And so, you know, it feels secret. It's not secret. It's a communications channel that a group of people use to communicate about important things. And of course people want insight into it. You know who really wants insight into it? People who want to break everything. Like, that's the reality of what we're dealing with, is that there are people out there who enjoy breaking things just for the sake of breaking things. And they're incredibly valuable to the ecosystem, actually. You know, this is not a system, these are not systems that are designed to work only in an environment of attack. In fact, they're designed to get stronger from their attacks. But what you don't do is hand your attackers the keys to the kingdom. And you build in layers. Security is all about the introduction of layers and inefficiency and human arbiters, because humans are incredibly good at measuring like these very subjective, difficult to assess things. You know, there's no algorithm that can detect whether somebody has ill intentions. And so that's really what the function of that is about. You know, I think improving our communications output and giving more insight into what we're doing, and witnesses like you, like Luke, you know, like NEX. My mind is still blown over that. You know, maybe we need to communicate more. You know, I think all of us in the space are very. We're skeptics by nature, and we're reflective by nature, and we're always looking to see how we can make things better. And I think the real important takeaway that maybe I'll end on is that the Steem consensus algorithm is a very limited, specific consensus protocol, and I think we need to maybe put more thought or more effort into how we come to consensus as a community, and what protocols that we build into our social norms that help us come to consensus. Because right now we're still in this phase where everybody goes, I have my pet thing that I want you to do, and I'm going to go to the person that maybe I think has the authority to do this, which nobody does because we're so decentralized, you know. And I'm just going to say, do this, because I want you to do it. And that's not how any of us make our decisions. What we do is we look at the consensus of the ecosystem, and right now it's still quite hard to assess that, you know? So we wait till things bubble up to the top, until everybody gets on the same page and goes, this is what we want. And so if we can come to consensus on solutions faster, that'll be great, because no, we're not thinking about how to make that better. We're thinking about what we always say. I'm probably getting super boring now, and I'm going to continue to get boring, because if it's not sign up, if it's not communities, if it's not SMTs, if it's not scalability, it's not a priority. And so my answer is always going to be no. If it's things, you know my answer now. I'm going to be super boring about it. What we're looking for is brilliant community members who are helping to be thought leaders, which seems to be a recurring theme in this discussion, and who are helping to achieve consensus on what is important in the ecosystem. And then you bring that to us. You bring to us a GitHub pull request that everybody thinks is a great idea. We will, the witnesses or whoever is in charge with merging that to production, we'll merge that shit.
So I think the short answer of that is Steemit is not going to organize a separate public communications group primarily for witnesses, and that the witnesses themselves should organize it?
I guess that is the answer. I mean, we have our kits in a dedicated Discord channel, and people can go in there and ask them any questions that they have. Did I cut out?
No, you're still here. You're doing great.
Okay. Okay, cool. But no, we put no thought into that. We were very focused.
Okay. That's loud and clear. And it looks like we might have lost Tim Cliff either permanently or temporarily. So one of my next thought, you actually mentioned priorities. And when I look at what I think is 2018, I think 2018 has what I think is going to be some highly agreeable priorities, not just for largely for Steemit as a company, but for the Steem blockchain in general. What I think nearly all of the witnesses are in total agreement that that communities, velocity, SMTs, that those are extreme priorities that we all agree on. Some of what I think has to happen is, what do we do after those? So I imagine that those things are coming in 2018. I don't want to put words into Andrarchy's mouth, but I imagine a lot of those are coming in 2018. And that I think 2018 as a witness is going to be a fairly non-contentious year. And then I start looking into 2019, and I think there's going to be a lot more disagreement about what the next priorities should be. And I kind of want to get that discussion rolling. If there's one topic that sort of comes up more than any others in terms of overall blockchain mechanics and distribution of rewards that the users that I see or that are the most vocal about it, they constantly refer to curation being broken. And I actually have seen this from lots of different perspectives, where people will say the very top and trending is broken, and then the very bottom through spam is broken. There seems to be some concern around curation. And so I don't know if curation will make it into the highest set of priorities over the next 6 months, but I'm curious what some of the folks in the panel think in terms of where does curation fall in your list of priorities? What do you think we as a community should be doing about it? And is this something that you think that we'll be addressing in 2019 or earlier?
Something contentious that might come up is the idea of bringing back a non-linear reward structure. We used to have a superlinear one, and it was basically n squared. But maybe that wasn't the right answer, but maybe n is also not the right answer. Maybe it's somewhere in between, and maybe that small amount of superlinearity is going to be what matters to make bid bots not worthwhile, to make self-voting not worthwhile, and to just bring that back to a more of like a communal organization for voting.
Yeah, I'd love, this is Luke talking, I'd love to see some more experiments with just small changes as opposed to massive changes where it's like, okay, that was massive, but do we really know, did that fix anything? Like, a lot of people are pretty upset about the linear reward curve, and I get that, but I also remember the people who got nothing when they had like, 20, 30, 40 votes and they got not even like a penny, when they started getting money, they're like, oh my gosh, Steam is for real, I really like this. So I think there's a balance there, right? Like, I love seeing people get rewarded without having a pile-on effect of a gazillion voters with a lot of Steam power. That is very cool. And I also see that the bid bots are a massive problem. And there's a good argument to be made that if you increase curation rewards, some people say all the way to 50%, you might solve some of these problems. But then with that, you then also have to change the 30-minute vote time, because that kind of messes it up for people who are doing actual curation. You have to build all these tools that vote 30 minutes later, and it gets a little bit funky. So there's a number of pieces moving that all have to go into the economics, the motivational psychology, the kind of changing perspective on the commons, like I was talking about earlier. So all these things come together, and it's frustrating to say SMTs, because that's kind of Ned's answer for everything, but there is some validity to the idea that we need more experiments running, and SMTs will give us that. And I would also like to see us make some small changes and see what happens, but again, it's very difficult to make changes on a moving machine that has millions or even billions of dollars involved. Like, who wants to be responsible for making a change that actually costs a bunch of people a bunch of money from their perspective? So it's not easy, and I think one of the challenges is gaining consensus on what changes we do want to make and why. Even the Steem blockchain dollar, that peg, we kind of all eventually got to the point where we said, yeah, we should have a peg, it should work, and it should be great, but we don't want to screw people over who are, expecting it to be worth more and are gaining more. So now these are the things we're trying to figure out, is how do we get consensus off-chain first so that we can decide about the code changes we want to make on-chain. And part of that relates to, again, open discussions with a larger community.
I can chime in here because I think, because I want to yes and what NEX and Luke just said, and also just highlight how remarkable of an ecosystem this is, because like, these guys are so smart, and the guys and girls on our platform, it's just amazing to see who gets these witness positions and the stuff that they work on, because like, those were two of the most astute observations. Like, they get to the core of the problem. And I think that on the one hand, yes, it is frustrating to always hear that SMTs are the answer, but at the same time, I do think that highlights the potential, right? Because all of this is theory. All of this are ideas and experiments. But the idea that very often our mind goes to, well, maybe SMTs could help with that, maybe communities can help with that, actually shows that we might be on the right track with those projects. And I just also want to highlight that I think that this is a great question to be addressing. What are we going to do after smart media tokens launch and after communities launch? What's the next thing? And that is what we're talking about here. We're talking about 6 months to a year from now. And so if we're looking that far out, then what the beautiful thing is that we can integrate these two key issues that both these guys just brought up, superlinearity and small changes, because I agree that superlinear could be a helpful solution. And what you want to do is enable more experimentation and more small changes so that we can A/B test what works and what doesn't work. And I do agree, and I do believe that smart media tokens are a vital component of that. And I don't want to say too much on this, but I would say make sure you follow Steem at Blog, and make sure you follow it over the next week or so, because we will be updating you all on what we think is an important component of this. Ned has already alluded to it. It's something called oracles. And with oracles, what you could do theoretically, if we decided to go that way, if we decided to add a layer here, what we could do is, if we could distribute rewards new rewards. We're not talking about adjustments to Steem, because what we need to remember about Steem, as Luke kind of alluded to, is that what we have here is a stable, complex system. And that is very, very hard to do. And that's what a lot of people in the space don't realize is, great, what you're saying is you're going to build a complex system and it's going to be stable. Good luck with that. It's very, very difficult. And that's what we have right now. And the horror of a stable complex system is that any small change could disrupt that state, you know, and it's growing too. So if what you could do is create a new point system, if anyone could create a new point system that is distributed not based on stake, but on individuality, and then you distribute rewards based on a super linear rewards curve, then in theory, what would happen there is that, there'd be no reward based on how much of the token you hold. It would just be, are you real? And then those real people would be tasked with upvoting content that they find valuable, and only the people who are really good at it would earn a lot of those tokens. And those tokens should be valuable because they're unearthing really, really high quality content, and they would be delivered on a super linear rewards curve, and they wouldn't disrupt Steem. So this is a theoretical exercise, but I just wanted to build on what those guys are saying, because it's my hope that that kind of helps to resolve that. But again, we're talking 6 months, a year from now, and it's very theoretical, and anything can happen in the next 6 months to a year. And I think it's just important that people bear all of that in mind. It's a very advanced conversation. It's great, but it's it's decently far into the future.
I would love to hear more from NEX and Tim Cliff also about the, you said stable, which I think is an interesting word, because I think there are some people that are concerned about systemic risk. And, NEX being an academic, you can talk to this a lot more than any of us, I think. But what are the real concerns about stability, and are there systemic risks that are creeping up, such as the proliferation of comment spam, of vote bots, of self-voting, these kind of things that, NEX's paper on, the mathematical proof of why this is a problem for DPoS. So I agree with what you said, Andraki, but I'm also curious, are we as stable as we think we are? And so what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Andraki said something near the beginning of this talk show that said that basically he wants to integrate the lessons that we learned from the past about businesses. And I think we need to apply that same logic to pretty much everything else. And one of the things that, like you were saying, Luke, about the DPoS system is that we also need to think about, well, we have what is basically a representative democracy style system here, and we need to learn from the past of what happens if you let representative democracies become corrupt. And you need to make sure that that doesn't happen here. And the same way, we have examples of social media sites that have rewarded users based on their content, and most of them have gone defunct because they don't work. And the reasons why they don't work is because they haven't really learned the lessons from the past. And we need to go look at that, see what's been happening, what lessons did they learn, how did it fail, why did it fail, think about that and try to improve upon that.
Yeah, so I think that I cannot possibly articulate it better than that. 100, with respect to whether this is a stable system or not, another term for complex system is a chaotic system, and so it is also a chaotic system, which means that if you look inside of it, countless things are going on that are impossible to really interpret, because they result in nonlinear outcomes. So when I say stable, I mean it in a very technical sense. It has a stable population, and it actually has a stable growth rate. So I mean it in that very specific sense. Now, what we're talking about here, an integral part of a stable system like this, like honestly, NEX, like NEX, put it perfectly, like the United States, many people here may love it, may hate it, whatever. It's stable. It's way more stable than any other population of than most other populations of 350 million people. Like you said, there are many lessons to be learned here. But if you zoom in to anything, right, part of that stable system is that half the people think that it's about to die imminently. So that's actually this conversation is vital. It is a vital component of ensuring that the system continues to be stable and continues to grow and continues to exist in the future. What we're really trying to do here, all you can really do, is build rules into the system that ensure it will continue to grow from attacks, right? So if anybody's familiar with the work of Nassim Taleb, I'm a big fan. Anti-fragility, it's a really important issue, and what we're trying to do is build anti-fragile systems. One of the pillars of our system is, like NEX said, it's a representative democracy. And like he said, we have to learn from the mistakes of the past, and we have to integrate them into our protocols, whether it's a blockchain protocol or social protocols or whatever. And that goes back to this critical issue of coming to consensus on things and communicating really well and getting those systems out. And everybody here is an active and valuable participant in that system. And it's just really exciting to be a part of. Like, it's far from perfect. That's the beauty of it. That's the fun of it. That's why we're all here. Like, these guys are so smart, and they're spending their time on this because they want to make it better. And nobody is here saying that it's perfect. Far from it. So, great points all around.
So I accidentally hijacked my own question, and I'm sorry that I did that. What I said is curation going to be on your radar in 6 months from now, and that probably shouldn't have been the question. I think the question is there's a lot of consensus for SMTs, for velocity, for communities. And I don't think that there's a lot of contention amongst the witnesses for what that should be. If you guys could delve into your imagination for a moment and imagine 6 months to a year from now, communities are in place, oracles are in place, SMTs are in place. What do we think we need to have as our next priority at that point? What should we be thinking about now to help us set up for success? And what I'd like to see is minimize contention. I'm hoping that we can get some sort of consensus amongst the witnesses of what the next priority is. Can you guys try to put yourselves into that space 6 months from now? And what do you think is going to be a need? What do you think that we need to be developing to make sure that we meet it? A little bit of fashion forward sense or blockchain forward sense here.
I could jump in unless Tim or someone else wants to go first.
Go for it, Luke.
Go for it.
This is my optimism speaking here. This is my idealism, and so it's probably wrong. But in 6 months, I would love to see so many of these core pieces in place, including app-based, including communities, SMTs launched. Again, that's optimistic. But if that was all there in 6 months, oh my goodness, the number one priority is going to be promotion. It's going to be taking this blockchain from 60,000 to 80,000 active accounts to millions and millions of active accounts. I would love to see tens of millions of signups, and if the foundations for scalability are in place, holy moly, like, we haven't seen anything yet. A lot of people got frustrated with Steem Incorporated for not doing more marketing, not doing more promotion, and it's kind of like, if the ship is just getting by, you don't load it up with a bunch more cargo. Like, we need to do the first things first. And so in 6 months, if all those base pieces are in place, holy moly, I could see the floodgates of lots and lots of money and investment going towards marketing and promotion in a way that unleashes developers, unleashes projects, and really gets individual people excited about doing what they already do on a number of different websites, but instead doing it on a blockchain and getting paid. And I think with SMTs, there's going to be enough financial investor incentive to do that. And I think that every time somebody goes, oh, I'm going to start a new company, they're going to pause for a second and say, wait a minute, could I instead start a distributed autonomous corporation and actually airdrop 75% of the tokens on my community that I want to be engaged? And can I, instead of doing an ICO, just keep some of the tokens and then all of a sudden create money out of nothing? And then, you know, and they have this shared story. All the value that we're talking about in cryptocurrency is just a nice shared story. So I think that Steem has an amazing story as the blockchain of opportunity. I think if all of the foundational layers are in place for incredible growth and sustainability as far as the number of transactions that can happen on a given moment, I think it's going to be amazing. The flood of new people we're going to bring in, and that to me, in 6 months, frankly, it's probably more like 9 months to a year. And if Steem Incorporated can't pull it off by then, I think they're going to have a huge challenge. I think other platforms are going to really make it difficult for them because, you know, a year is a long time in this space. 6 months even is a long time. So I'm hopeful that in 6 months the big thing is going to be just dealing with the onslaught of new members and getting them up to speed. There's a thing called the Eternal September that I should do a post on, talking about when you bring people in too quickly, you can actually have a challenge teaching them about the community and the culture quickly enough. So I think that's going to be part of that challenge if we get to that point where millions and millions of accounts are signing up regularly.
That was, I just can't second everything Luke just said more. That you could drop the mic there. So spot on as far as I can tell. Like, that was really, really, really insightful stuff there. The only thing that I would modify is maybe, you know, I mean, I agreed with literally everything you were saying. Like, you know, 6 to 9 months, like the time frames that we're talking about, they seem, you know, very, very spot on. The only thing is that while I agree that 6 months to a year, is it a short time though? I mean, like, we've been in the, I thought we would have so many competitors by now, and it's been 2 years, you know, since we launched. And I think, and you know, when I see a lot of people now, they go, look at this competitor, look at this competitor. For us, for all of us here talking right now, that's not new for us. We heard it all the time. We've been hearing it almost since we launched. So while I agree with you on everything, and that this is, you know, these are the goals, these are the objectives, and we by no means are resting on our laurels. We're looking at the competition, and whereas, you know, we need to assume that all of their claims are right. I'm not saying we can just rest back and go, they're full of shit. I'm only saying that actually 6 months and a year in the space actually is surprisingly a longer time than maybe I originally thought. But the most important takeaway is that everything you said was just so insightful and so spot on. I mean, yes.
All right, so we have 2 people for promotion. NEX, Crimson Tim, put on your imagination for 6 months down the road. What do you think is going to be a priority? And if anything, what are there things that we need to be building now to help make those priorities kind of seamless?
Oh man, 6 months is a pretty hard time. I have a hard time figuring out what I'm going to be focusing on in like a week or two, because the things kind of change and priorities come up. I guess looking in the future, what I see is that, you know, kind of building on Steem, its current mission of building a lot of framework platform type tools, where I see this Steem space going in about 6 months is really opening up the floodgates to application developers to come in and build really cool stuff on Steem. Like, for example, one of the things that I've seen a huge frustration on over the past few years is just developers who come in and they can't figure out how to do basic stuff just because the learning curve is so high. And there's been a lot of improvements on the developer portal. I've kind of been involved with that a little bit as far as a lot of suggestions and a few pull requests. But I think a developer coming into the space right now has a lot more tools at their disposal to be able to build really cool things, and I think that's only going to continue to improve. And so what I'm really looking forward to is seeing, 6 months from now, what are some of the cool projects that community members take on and build to really enhance the ecosystem?
I'm going to kind of just tack on the end of that. It's funny because we're all talking about the technological side of it, which is important. But I think, part of the reason that we see retention issues is also that we don't necessarily build in a culture here. And that's part of the reason that communities do so well. And it's something that we kind of have to work at as a group. And it's not just a witness thing. It's not just a Steem It thing. It's everyone. Expectations are really difficult when you have these amazing potentialities with this technology and everybody goes, yes, free money from the internet. The people that you get don't necessarily come here with an open mind to all of the possibilities that the blockchain offer. So it's important, for me too. I'm thinking, 6 months down the road, if we have all of these awesome technological tools, do we have all the groups here or all of the people here having the right sort of foundation built in when they come? Like, can we find ways to better explain that you have an immutable place to use your voice here? You have a censorship-free place to use your voice here. What are the other benefits of blockchain, of Steem It, of all of the tools that are being built here? And yeah, money is one thing, tokenization is one thing, but I think one thing that I personally would like to see build, especially, from talking to so many people, is these expectations. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of this is now being skewed by bid bots and other things. So over the next 6 months, the human component needs to be built too, because I want to see retention. I want to see people getting excited about this technology. Part of that is simply helping them build the right mindset when they come. And whose responsibility is that? Is it any one front end? Is it the community as a whole? Is it witnesses? And that's something that we have to decide as time goes on. But for me, it's really important, basically, that I connect with people and I remind them that when you start, even if you're not making the money that you expect, remember the other benefits that you get from here. And how we move forward and how we kind of celebrate that is going to be really important too, both for onboarding, for marketing, for retention, for all the other things. So, I mean, as much as I am a nerdy, dorky dev and I sit behind the scenes and design interfaces to tools, I also really want to see the human interfacing side of things, which sounds really rude now that I've said it.
NEX?
Yeah, something that Luke said is really got me thinking, and because it is a great example, the eternal September problem. And that's something that I had been really concerned about for the longest time, and I've said this probably many months ago, is that I'm really concerned about when new people come here, get onboarded, and they don't understand their prioritization structure. They think about the short term, they don't think about the long term. Maybe they don't have good enough information to read to understand what their place should be in this community. And Androrky will probably go and say, well, we need communities for that. And I think, yes, that's might help solve it, but I think there's more fundamental to that too, is that the whole community also has to be on board with it. We don't just need the structure, we need the culture to change too. And I think Steem Cleaners is trying our best to push in that direction, but sometimes it's not enough. We don't have enough people, we don't have enough of the culture pushing that direction. Like, there's some pretty incredible stats that I can throw out to you. It's like Cheetah's hit almost 500,000 comments, and that's like incredible to think about. And the cost for running her is like $300 per day, just because of how much crap is being posted here. And a lot of people are focusing on a lot of other stuff, which is great. But if we start to ignore this problem, it's just going to balloon out of control when the floodgates open.
I actually agree on this assessment. And while I do think that my mind didn't even go to communities, though. Maybe some kind of intro community could really help people. But I do think that there are ways that we can help on here, and ways that we're thinking about helping, because there are some opportunities, I think, for very small, not engineering resource intensive adjustments in various places that could help accomplish some of the goals that we're talking about here. You know, maybe there's some stuff that we could do on the content side of this to help out, and maybe some other stuff in the product realm. So I think this is a good conversation to be having, and there are a few things that we have in the works. Some smaller projects in space that I can't really talk about right now, but that will hopefully help, because I think NEX is right that it is a problem that shouldn't be ignored.
I guess my own answer. I would echo many of the concerns that the other witnesses have brought up. I tend to keep in my brain that there's four main stakeholder groups that are part of the Steem ecosystem. You have the devs and the people that build the applications here. You have investors that spend a lot of money and are often looking for passive returns rather than active returns. So ways to make money similar to bid bots. Maybe there are other inventions that can come. I spend most of my time thinking about the sort of active bloggers and active content creators. I think that represents the bulk of the people that use Steem every day and the bulk of the people that are part of the Minnow Support Project. So I think about the bloggers a lot. But as I guess when I put my hat on and I think, let me go look into the future here, I think that the merchant class that doesn't really exist a ton now. We have a handful of businesses that are growing on this ecosystem. When the floodgates open and we go from 1 million accounts to 5 million accounts, and our active user base scales non-linearly with that, so that we go from 60,000 active users a day to 500,000 or more per day. I think we're going to have this a very strong merchant class start building into this ecosystem, more so than what we've seen so far, and that the dApps that we have and the apps that we have are going to grow. And I think having tools and communication and having networking and having it could just, maybe I just need like a freaking chamber of commerce or something and put together the community for the business folks and have that help get off the ground, because I think what we have now is quite limited in scope, and I think that merchant class is going to play a much larger role after the floodgates. We're going to have a lot of active bloggers and a lot of the active blogger concerns, and much of that is going to stay the same, although it's going to be tweaked now that we have communities and SMTs and lots of brand new user questions, because if you thought it was tricky with 2 tokens, when it goes up to like 30 million tokens, people are going to get confused. But all of that is going to bring a lot of attention to the business that can happen here. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in fostering what we can to help the business community grow here, from tools and networking. I think that'll be one of the priorities that I put either on myself personally or onto this Discord group and the mods here. So we're now at 3 minutes over. I want to sort of pose one last open-ended question. You can either leave us with a thought, lead us with something you want to draw attention to, leave us with anything. This is intentionally quite broad. I'm just open to last thoughts from all the panelists, and would also give a very warm thank you. And I'm glad that you participated. And Jorky, thank you for being here and representing Steemit. For the other top 20 witnesses, I'm so thankful that you took some time on this holiday weekend to share some thoughts to this whole blockchain. This whole thing has been recorded and will be put out there shortly, but just want to open up last thoughts, last things that you want to share before we try to do this another month from now. Because the next one of these will be they're always the last Saturday of the month at this 11 a.m. Eastern time. So final thoughts you'd like to share that you'd like people to leave thinking about. Tim, do you want to start us off and we'll work our way back up?
Oh man, I was kind of liking to be the last person because I got some time to collect my thoughts. But yeah, I'll go first. So I want to bring up a point that I brought up on a few interviews ago, which is the idea of $10 Steem. So the last time we were talking about this, it was 2017, and we were saying Wouldn't it be awesome if we could make 2018 the year of $10 Steem? And then, we started out the very end of last year into the beginning of really early beginning, kind of with a huge price spike. And I thought we were going to hit it right away. And I was like, oh man, Steem by January, where do we go from there? And a lot of this depends on the market. But I also think that a lot of the value of Steem comes from our users. And tying into what Luke Stokes was saying earlier, I feel it's really important for every individual here to be looking at how they can add value to the community as opposed to extract value. Obviously, extracting value and getting paid is good, but the more value that we as a community can add to the ecosystem in whatever ways we have the ability to do so, the more attractive it's going to be for investors who are looking at the space to be able to buy Steem tokens because they feel that they're going to be in even higher demand in the future. So just looking for different things that we can do as individuals and as a community to add value to the Steem token, I think is an important thing for everyone to keep in mind.
Oh, it's huge, Tim. I completely agree. Adding value, and again, it's just kind of been my focus lately, because I think we're actually going through a transition to even understand what value is. We used to think it's labor, or it's intrinsically this, that, or the other. It's gold, it's silver, but we're starting to realize these are all just stories. They're just stories to tell us collectively something we all agree to, and that's where value comes from. And if we all believe it's value, then it becomes value. And so the more people, so we have two challenges. One, we have to teach people what value actually is, and then two, we have to actually help them understand the stories being told and how that relates to the Steem ecosystem. So it's like, first we got to help people understand what value is. Once they understand what value is, we have to then teach them how to actually create it and not just extract it. Because I do think there's a lot of well-meaning people that want to add value to Steem, and they think that if they post more often, that's doing that. And that's not necessarily the case, And so it's important to talk to investors, for an example. Like, what do investors want to see on the Steem blockchain? What stories do they need to be told in order to put more trust in the Steem token, which increases the rewards pool for everybody? So these are the kind of things that I'd like for us as a community to be talking about. What do we think value is, and how do we add more value to Steem? Because sometimes people do things that they think is adding value, and it's actually extracting it, and they don't even recognize the difference. They think, oh, it's valuable to me to cash out. Well, yeah, it might be to you, but you might be hurting yourself in the long run, because you're hurting the story about the Steem token that can be a collaborative commons place of value for the globe. So there's a lot here that we all have to do as a community, and it's not just us. Like, I really do think that Steem and Steemit is a microcosm of what's happening in the world in a lot of different places. We're starting to peel back the curtain of what value actually is. We're looking at the wizard behind the curtain, and we're going, wait a minute, this story we've been told about fiat doesn't really work anymore. What's the new story we're going to believe? And we get to create it ourselves. So I would love to see more people asking yourself, what is value, and how do I add it to the blockchain of Steem? And if you're not sure, talk to some people who are adding value. Talk to people who have gained a lot of value and say, what are you doing to add value? And read some of their posts on value itself. And I would love, I did this a long time ago. I did the Steem at Pizza challenge, trying to get people to think about Bitcoin. And the first purchase in Bitcoin was just for a pizza, 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza. Why did that happen? We should all have an answer for that. Have an answer for what gives cryptocurrency and what gives Steem value. And then I think we can get to that $10. I completely agree, Tim. We can go there and more.
Crimson?
We're just cascading down the list with value. Absolutely. And so I thought I was going to go one way with my answer, but now it seems like I should follow in this line, because I talk to a lot of people every day who are from the bottom to the top, from planktons all the way up to whales. But the difference is when we talk about how do we discover what personal value is, it's exactly as Luke and Tim have pointed out. Value is not only what is valuable to you. And that's kind of an important thing for us to consider, is that we are the Steemit ecosystem. We are the Steem ecosystem. We are an ecosystem. So whether we like it or not, we don't get to take everybody else out of the equation in this ecosystem. So the only thing I can say to you is to help determine how to bring value and how to judge value is think critically. And part of these forums bring part of that to the forefront. So when you are out there, don't just think critically about your own work, but about what you see in posts, about how you're encouraging other people to be posting. Think critically about your witnesses, because I see a lot of the time in here, you know, even in this chat today, in this witness forum, you guys are going, well, what are they doing? I can't see it, you know, and that's important. Engage with people, because critical thinking is your proof of brain here. You don't necessarily have to accept a witness because they're a top 20. You don't have to accept a witness because they say vote for, accept a post because it says vote this post and help me do whatever. Use your brain and interact with the people around you, because that is the difference between retention. That is the difference between making this blockchain better, whether you're a dev, a witness, a minnow, a blogger, a streamer. Just use your brains, think critically. And when in doubt, you guys all know, if you've ever heard me here on the radio or around the platform, kindness costs nothing. Approach things with kindness. Try to understand other people. Because once you understand the people, then you end up understanding the technology. Systems don't deviate that far from the parts that they're made up of.
NEX?
I guess we'll continue down the line of value. I like this idea and I like this theme because I do believe that value creation is so much more important than value transfer or value extraction, as you guys have been putting it. And that's exactly what I talked about in one of my latest posts, is that if people start only thinking about value transfers or what is more financially beneficial to them in the short term, they end up destroying the very resource that they have, or they degrade the security of it. And that is just a bad spiral to get into, because it just goes down and down and down and down from there. And the thing about value creation is that it benefits everyone, not just you. That's how we're going to get $10 Steem, not by you taking out Steem and selling it, but from everyone getting on board, creating value for Steem, and just blowing it up that way.
Anjarki, do you want to take a shot at that? Anjarki?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I definitely want to continue.
Oh,
So glad to be taking.
you're cutting in and out. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Sorry about that. Jeez, I didn't want to disrupt the flow because, man, this conversation of value creation and it cascading down through from Luke down to you know, Crimson Clad and then NEX. Like, this is not only is this the important conversation to be having, but this is a very high level conversation. We are all participating in a revolution in the definition and the exploration of what value is, and then how it's tokenized, and how systems are designed to maximize value creation. And I have nothing really to add to what everybody has said, other than think back about what they said, because it was incredibly profound and important. And I'll end with the fact that Peter Thiel, for those who aren't aware, he's one of the most successful investors of all time. Early investor in Facebook and Tesla Motors and SpaceX. He invests not based on revenue or profits or anything else you can think of. He invests based on story. It all goes back to the story that we're telling about how we're creating value. And that's the key takeaway here. And my goal is to somehow help our storytelling abilities and to take our storytelling to the next level. And my kind of palette is Steem it, but the goal is to use that palette to paint about the Steem blockchain and how it helps create value and how it turbocharges people's storytelling abilities. And that's not just their blogs. When you create an application that leverages the Steem blockchain, the first thing you should do is get on steemit.com or busy.org and begin telling that story, and doing it in a way that tells everybody about the value you're creating in an authentic way. And so I think this value conversation, the importance of story, is a great way to finish off this amazing conversation that I feel very privileged to be participating in, and couldn't be happier to be here, to be invited here, and to be enabled to engage in this way with these amazing people. Thank you.
I'm stoked to have you. I hope that you continue to be a regular monthly guest on the show, maybe even more frequent than that if you want to do some interviews along the way and get some word out. I'm happy to help and support that. In terms of my own answer, I think this is somewhat in line. It's a little bit more selfish. Hopefully, you guys will forgive me. I'm planning on releasing Steem Monsters today, tomorrow, something like that. And I think, based off of the success of CryptoKitties, I think that this has every chance to be a major draw to the Steem ecosystem. This is an alpha, so we're at the point where you can purchase cards, hold those cards, start collecting duplicates, and eventually the dream of this is that I was watching my two daughters kind of wrestle with one another, and I imagined that one of them would like rip off one button off of a piece of clothing, throw it down on the ground, and then a monster would appear, and those two monsters would fight for them rather than they would fight each other. And that was the idea behind. We're going to have summoners that can summon monsters, and we're going to have the monsters that will actually fight one another. And my dream is for this thing to sort of rival CryptoKitties, but bring that attention to the Steem ecosystem, and have this be a game that has daily requirements if you would like to continue to level your monsters and level your fighters and level your characters. And that is very intentional because I want to keep people engaged in the Steem ecosystem. And so to some extent, I'm thinking about that story. What is the story behind this? It is a collectible card game. It is built on the Steem blockchain. It has RPG elements so that all of your monsters will level, all of your summoners will level. Eventually, we'll give them all items so that the items will level and they'll get new abilities and hopefully be a draw to keep people coming back here. And I also think it is in part that discussion of what is value. And I think one of the highest systems of value that we have and that we are really freaking good at exporting as a community is entertainment. And entertainment, I think, is one of the highest valued activities out there that you could export. So I think our economy is bound to do well because entertainment is so highly valued and we are really good at delivering that. And so in that vein, I wanted to provide a video game experience that can provide rewards, that you can get cards, that you can trade cards, that you can do things. It's still an alpha, but I'm trying, actually, I think what a lot of these folks are talking about, I'm trying to do with this project of what is value that I can bring here. Building a video game, I think, is one of them. Building something that demonstrates how you can do that on the blockchain, I think, is one of them. Doing something that will make people want to be here day in and day out to go add activity to our network, I think, is another good thing. And then honestly, using this as a way to reward users through tournaments that are daily and trying to give money back to this community like I do with delegation and like I do with other things to incentivize being here. I think those are the kinds of things that'll help. So that at least is one of my answers to some of those questions that are ongoing in terms of how I can help and what I can do. I'm very excited to have launched that project with Yabamat, and that would be, at least in terms of my final thoughts for folks, I hope that you can poke around with Steem Monsters. Forgive us as it takes us a couple months to develop. As Andrarchy's saying, if this stuff takes time, I'm wondering how much of my own words I'm going to eat for pushing for when are deadlines, when are these things happening. I'm sure I'm going to get my own fair dose of that. And that will be fun because it means that we have a good problem. Like when you have that, like Andrarchy says, it's the good sign that people want what you have and they want more of what you have. And in many ways, it's a sign of health. And in many ways, I'm sure it can be frustrating and infuriating. So I don't know. I got 99 problems, and hopefully Steam Monsters will be one of the biggest problems that I have, because that would be a dream. So that might be a little weird note to end on. Hey, Crimson, are you spinning right after this? Are you gonna DJ a little later? What's your plan?
My show regularly comes on in 2 hours' time, so I don't know. We can decide what we all want to do. Maybe somebody will hop in and pirate. Maybe I can hang around. I don't know. It's going to be going on like 6 hours on air if I stay all the way through.
All right. I'll DJ some 90s music just for a little bit here. My dad is in town from California, so that's my next plan is to go visit with fam. But while we have an audience, I figure I should go spin, and if somebody else would like to do some pirate or take over for a show, I'm happy to go switch that up. I guess my final thoughts would be thank you for coming here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for checking this out. I'm stoked to be able to go do this as a service to the community to help bridge Steam It and the top witnesses and do my part to make that more accessible. I guess what I will say is that we have within the Minnow support community, we actually have a chat channel that's called MSP Witness. So I'm putting that link down there. That's actually for the MSP Witness chat. If Andrarchy's not going to organize it, then I guess I will spend some time organizing that. One of the places people can go is certainly Steam Chat. Another place that we would welcome folks is into the Minnow Support Project and the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty network, and you guys can post whatever you need in that MSP Witness. It would be a folks that aren't witnesses can read what is happening there. Folks that are witnesses can get the role and start posting. I'm not going to throttle back if as long as you're not banned from the community, you are certainly welcome to post in there if you're a witness. And maybe that's a way that we can continue that conversation. But so those are some of the business. I'm going to play some music, and I guess I'd just like to say thank you to the audience. Thank you for the witnesses. Thank you to Andrarchy. I'm excited to have you all here. We'll continue this discussion a month from now, and it looks like Fierstekin will join us on the panel, so I'm excited for that. And I don't know. You've been listening to MSP Waves Radio. I've been your host, Agrode. I've been joined by Andrarchy, NEX, Crimson Clad, part of the Follow BTC News Witness, Luke Stokes, and Tim Cliff. You're listening to MSP Waves. This has been the Steam Witness panel discussion. And now let's go play some 90s rock. Thanks all for coming. So glad to have you here, and looking forward to continuing to provide some entertainment and some communication and very much some value on the Steam blockchain. Thanks, guys.